Howdy, Immortalium here, and welcome to a discussion video. This is actually something I wanted to discuss for quite a while now, but I've never had a kind of a good reason to actually create this video, at least until I saw this Indiegogo campaign. So basically what this Indiegogo campaign is basically they want to expand animator dorms. Basically, there's a group that have set up animator dorms in Tokyo. They allow animators to live there relatively cheaply, to be able to interact with each other, to be able to, be taught how to, properly animate, etc., etc., which is a great thing. And what this Indiegogo campaign wants to do, just like the previous Indiegogo campaign that they did in 2015, is they want to be able to expand the dorms, allow more animators to be able to live there and be able to, pay low rent. But of course, I guess a big question is, why do they need low rent? Why does this project need to exist in the first place? And that's something I want to touch upon today. So, animators in Japan. First of all, I guess I should point out that because this is quite a factual video, I'll be including links into the description below of sources where I've gotten this information. One, of course, is to the Indiegogo campaign. I do think it's worth supporting, just to be able to help keep the anime industry going. But beyond that, I'll also have the articles that I actually got this information from. And if you want to be able to peruse those articles, you can just do so by going into the links in the description. So, let's start out with the conditions for animators themselves. So, when an animator begins in the industry, in the anime industry, they start out by working on key animation. An animator, at least one that's beginning, will have a yearly salary of, listen to this now, because this will make you cringe. This is their initial wage yearly, $9,392 approximately. Now, depending on where you live, I guess that could sound a bit high, but to put it in perspective, Tokyo, which is where a lot of these animators work, has one of the highest cost of livings in the world. And so this wage is actually pretty much paramount to slave labor. I think, if I'm correct, it's actually below minimum wage. And the reason for that is that the animators are paid by how many pictures that they can draw. But because they're just starting out, they're not able to draw that many pictures at all. So their income is really, really low, and they have to work insanely long. Like, for example, over 70% of animators in Japan work over 10 to 12 hours, which I think is crazy, particularly for that pathetic little wage. So that's just kind of mind-boggling. And it's amazing, like, that they can even survive that amount of work, that, pathetic wage. And I guess a big question, of course, that a lot of you are going to be asking is, well, that's not, the problem of us, that's the problem of the Japanese companies. They're not paying these animators enough. They should. Anime is doing very well right now. There was a report done about how the anime Blu-rays and DVDs are amongst the best that they've ever been doing in Japan. They're selling pretty well. But to put that into perspective, even though they're selling very well, and even though there's a lot of anime series being produced yearly now, only about 20% of the anime produced actually make their money back in that first year. Which is kind of crazy because anime is really, really cheap to produce. Basically, the average anime episode will cost you approximately about $100,000 to maybe $300,000 to make. And I know that sounds like quite a lot, but in America, like, let's take Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, I think, is about $10 million per episode, whereas a whole anime series will get you somewhere around, I think, $2 to $4 million. So, huge difference, and I'm fairly sure there's a lot of other American TV shows that cost in the millions, at least, per episode. So, anime is really, really dirt cheap, and I remember hearing this great little description that if an American producer came to Japan and had to start working on anime, they'd probably weep at the shoestring budget that they'd get. So, anime is really dirt cheap, yet they only 20% make their money back in their first year. Now, of course, over time, actually about 70% of anime do actually end up making back their money. But even so, the amount of profit being made per series, unless it's a huge hit, is very low. And considering the amount of animators that work on each series of anime, even though anime is a form of limited animation, so, there isn't too much animation being done in comparison to other parts of the world, even with that, even a small increase in the salary of each animator would cause the budgets of anime to skyrocket and become unprofitable. So you can see why anime companies are not in a position to be able to increase the wages for the animators. Now, this next bit of information I couldn't actually find an article on. I remember reading this before, but I couldn't find an article, so just be free to take this part as a bit of opinion. But I'm fairly sure I read this somewhere before. Basically, because of how low the wages are in anime, a lot of people in Japan who would be going into the anime industry opt instead to move into the Japanese video game industry. Now, even though the Japanese video game industry isn't as great as it once was, it's not the healthiest time that it's ever been for the Japanese video game market. It's still a much, much better place to be able to earn money and a living than in anime. Kind of the big point is, animators who are going into anime are going in because they're passionate about anime, because they definitively want to work on anime. But even so, quite often they have to work second jobs in order to just be able to make ends meet. Which, considering they're working 10 to 12 hours or more per day, it just boggles the mind into how they can actually even survive. So that's why these dorms are being created. It's so that animators don't need to work, a second job, that they can actually be able to hang out with other animators, be able to learn their craft, be able to make better wages. Because eventually you do actually end up making a decent wage the higher up you go in the anime industry. Like once you get to like close to a producer, maybe a director of some kind, you start making a decent wage. But just the initial wages are horrific. And to be honest, I don't really see how the anime industry can solve it. I mean, the solutions that I can think of: increased DVD and Blu-ray sales, increased ratings for television, increased ad revenue, increased amount of people watching on legal streaming websites. Just that stuff seems very unlikely to happen. The best way to be able to support these animators at the moment, beyond simply buying, the DVDs and Blu-rays of anime series, is to be able to invest in this project, these kind of projects, to be able to make life easier for them, to be able to help nurture their talent, etc., etc. And if you look in Indiegogo, they actually have a list of several animators who have been nurtured by this program, and it's pretty amazing to see that a lot of these animators are already working on like top-notch anime series, like Gundam Reconquista, what's that one, Cabanera of the Iron Fortress, that one that everyone compares to Attack on Titan, Psychopath 2. There's a lot of people, a lot of animators who have been nurtured by this program and are now in decent positions in the anime industry. So it just shows how important that this little project can be to the entire anime industry. It allows more people to be able to work in the anime industry, to be able to nurture their talent, etc., etc. And we just need to be able to think about this problem, to be able to see if we can do anything about it. Most assuredly, not ourselves individually. We alone can't actually solve this problem, but together, maybe we can. It's just worth knowing about anyway. That's the basic point. So, yeah, that's my discussion video on basically the wages of animators. They're really low, and these kind of projects do really help them. So I just do think that it's worth investing in this Indiegogo campaign. I know I definitely will be. So hopefully you found this video informative and entertaining. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.